My name is Corbett, and I am 58 years old. I never thought I would be standing outside a church watching my only daughter in her wedding dress telling me to go away. The pain was unbearable, but what happened next changed everything. Instead of causing a scene, I simply smiled, spoke from my heart, and my response left everyone speechless. Even now, years later, I still remember how a single moment of dignity transformed our broken relationship forever. If you are watching this, I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Take a second to let me know in the comments, and if my story resonates with you, consider subscribing to join our community of storytellers and truth seekers. I was never meant to be a single father. That was not the plan when Sarah and I got married 26 years ago. We were young in love and dreamed of raising at least 3 children together in our modest home in rural Pennsylvania. But life rarely follows our carefully laid plans. I have been a construction worker my entire adult life. There is something honest about building things with your hands, about coming home with dirt under your fingernails, and the satisfaction of seeing something tangible you have created. I was never wealthy, but I made enough to support our family, especially after Sarah gave birth to Amanda, our beautiful daughter. When Amanda was 12, our world collapsed. Sarah was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. She fought bravely for 8. During those final months, as Sarah grew weaker, she made me promise to take care of our daughter, to make sure she had every opportunity in life. "Promise me you will give her the world, Corbett," Sarah whispered one night, her hand fragile in mine. "Promise me you will be there for every important moment." I promised. And after Sarah passed, I dedicated my life to keeping that promise. Becoming both mother and father to a pre-teen girl was the hardest thing I have ever done. I had no idea how to talk about periods or help with makeup. But I tried. Lord knows I tried. I took on a second job working nights at the local hardware store so I could afford to keep our house and give Amanda the things she needed. Despite the exhaustion, those early years as a single father hold some of my most precious memories. Every Sunday we would go fishing at Lake Morrison. Amanda was better at it than me, always catching the biggest fish with a patience I admired. I taught her how to change a tire, how to fix a leaky faucet, practical skills that Sarah would have teased me about. "Dad, you are teaching me to be a handyman, not a lady," Amanda would joke, but I could tell she was proud of these skills. She was a brilliant student, always bringing home straight A's. When she was accepted to all 7 colleges, she applied to including 2 Ivy Leagues. I could not have been prouder. I remember standing in the kitchen reading her acceptance letter to Cornell, tears streaming down my face. "Your mother would be so proud of you, Mandy," I told her, using the nickname she had loved as a child. To pay for her education, I took out a second mortgage on our home and picked up weekend shifts. For her freshman year, I needed to buy her a laptop. Rather than spend money on gas, I walked 5 miles to work every day for 3 months to save up enough. The blisters on my feet were worth it to see her face when I gave her that computer. "This is everything I wanted, Dad," she said, hugging me tight. Those moments made all the sacrifices worthwhile. During her high school graduation, I sat in the audience alone, clapping louder than anyone when they called her name. She was valedictorian, and during her speech, she thanked me for being her rock. I felt in that moment that I had fulfilled my promise to Sarah. Our daughter was going to be all right. She was going to have opportunities neither Sarah nor I ever had. Before she left for college, we sat on our porch swing, the same swing where I had rocked her to sleep as a baby. "I am going to make you proud, Dad," she said, leaning her head on my shoulder like she used to. "You already have, Mandy," I replied. "You already have." I had no idea then that sending her off to college would mark the beginning of the end of the relationship I had worked so hard to build. That the daughter who once looked at me with such love and admiration would one day stand before me in a white dress and tell me I was not welcome at the most important moment of her life. The changes in Amanda were subtle at first. During her freshman year at Cornell, she would call every Sunday, just like we had planned. She would tell me about her classes, her new friends, and how much she missed my cooking. But as the first semester progressed, those calls became shorter, less frequent, and eventually stopped altogether. When she came home for Christmas break, something was different. She spent most of her time texting friends or on her laptop. When I suggested we go fishing like old times, she rolled her eyes. "Dad, nobody goes fishing anymore. That is so rural." The way she said rural stung like it was something to be ashamed of. I noticed she had started speaking differently too. Her Pennsylvania accent was disappearing, replaced by something more polished. She had new clothes that I knew I had not paid for expensive brands I could never afford. "My roommate Jessica let me borrow some things," she explained when I asked. "Her family has like a vacation house in the Hamptons and another in Aspen." During her sophomore year, Amanda invited a few college friends to stay with us during spring break. I spent days cleaning the house, making sure everything was perfect. I even took time off work to prepare home-cooked meals. But when her friends arrived in their luxury cars, I saw the embarrassment on her face as she introduced me. "This is my dad," she said flatly, not using my name. Later, I overheard her telling her friends, "He works in construction. It is just temporary until he finds something better." But it was not temporary. Construction was my career, my livelihood, the work that had put food on our table and was paying for her education. Hearing her dismiss it so casually felt like a slap in the face. During their stay, Amanda and her friends mostly went out, avoiding the house and the meals I had prepared. When they were home, they would lower their voices when I entered the room, or worse, switch to talking about topics they knew I could not contribute to, foreign films or political theories I had never studied. One evening, I brought them ice cream from the local dairy farm, a place Amanda had loved since childhood. "We are actually all dairy-free now," one of her friends said with a condescending smile. Amanda quickly added, "Yeah, Dad, that stuff is full of hormones anyway." The ice cream melted in the bowls untouched. In her junior year, I decided to surprise her with a visit. I drove the 6 hours to Cornell, excited to see the campus and meet her professors. I had taken Friday off work, losing a day's wages, but it would be worth it to see where my daughter was thriving. When I called to tell her I was on campus, her response was panic, not joy. "Dad, you should have told me you were coming," she said, her voice tight. "I have plans tonight." She met me in the student center rather than inviting me to her apartment. She kept checking her phone, clearly anxious to be somewhere else. When a group of well-dressed students walked by and waved to her, she gave a quick wave back and turned away, not introducing me. "Are those your friends?" I asked. "I would love to meet them." "They are just people from class," she said dismissively. "Nothing special." We had an awkward dinner at a chain restaurant off campus, and she was back in her dorm by 8:30 p.m., claiming she had to study. I spent the night in my truck rather than waste money on a hotel, and drove home the next morning without seeing her again. That winter, Amanda announced she would be spending Christmas break with her roommate's family in Vail. "They have this tradition of skiing on Christmas Day," she explained. "It would be rude to say no." I spent Christmas alone for the first time since Sarah died, staring at the gifts I had bought for Amanda wrapped and waiting under our small artificial tree. When graduation approached, I was determined to celebrate properly. I saved for months to throw her a small party, inviting our relatives, and her few high school friends who were still in town. I ordered a cake from the fancy bakery in the city, not the local grocery store. 2 days before the party, Amanda called. "Dad, I am so sorry, but Jessica's parents are taking a bunch of us to their lake house after graduation. I cannot miss it. Can we reschedule?" We never did reschedule. I attended her graduation alone, waving from the audience, but she was surrounded by her new friends afterward and gave me only a quick hug before rushing off to take photos. The cake sat in my refrigerator until it went stale, and I eventually threw it away. I told myself this was normal. She was growing up, finding her own path. Sarah would have understood better than me, would have known how to bridge this growing gap between us. But without her, I was lost, watching helplessly as the daughter I had raised slipped away from me. The summer after graduation, Amanda moved to New York City for a job at a marketing firm. The position did not pay much, but she somehow afforded a nice apartment in Brooklyn. I later learned her roommate's parents were covering most of the rent. During one of our increasingly rare phone conversations, Amanda mentioned she had started dating someone named Jackson. "He works in finance," she said, her voice animated in a way it had not been when talking to me in years. "His family has been in banking for generations." I was happy she had found someone special, and when she invited me to New York to meet him 3 months later, I was overjoyed. Perhaps this was a sign that she wanted to reconnect, to include me in her life again. I bought new clothes for the occasion, not wanting to embarrass her. I even got a haircut at a proper salon instead of cutting it myself like I usually did. The bus ride to New York took nearly 5 hours, but my excitement made the time pass quickly. We met at an upscale restaurant in Manhattan, the kind of place where I immediately felt out of place. Jackson was tall and polished, with the confident handshake of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. "So you are in construction," he said after Amanda introduced us. It was not a question, but a statement, as if confirming something disappointing. "Yes, for over 30 years now," I replied, trying to sound proud of my career. "Interesting," he said, in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "My father always says there is dignity in all work." The condescension was unmistakable. Throughout dinner, Jackson spoke about his travels, his Yale education, and his family's summer home in the Hamptons. He asked me no questions about my life or work. When I tried to share stories about Amanda's childhood, she would quickly interrupt. "Dad, nobody wants to hear about that fishing trip again," she would say, with an uncomfortable laugh. After dinner, Jackson excused himself to take a call, and I had a moment alone with my daughter. "He seems nice," I offered, trying to be supportive. "His family is connected to everyone who matters in New York," she replied, missing my hesitation. "Last month they had dinner with the mayor." When the check came, I reached for it, wanting to treat them despite knowing it would strain my budget for weeks. Jackson smoothly intercepted it. "Please allow me," he said. "I insist." The way Amanda looked at him then with admiration and gratitude was a look she had once reserved for me. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. As we parted ways outside the restaurant, Jackson checking his phone while waiting for a car service, Amanda hugged me briefly. "Thanks for coming, Dad," she said. But her eyes were already drifting back to Jackson, her real life waiting to resume once I was gone. 6 months into their relationship, Amanda called with news. "Jackson proposed," she exclaimed. "We are getting married next June." I congratulated her, genuinely happy that she had found love despite my reservations about Jackson. Then I asked about meeting his family. "Actually," she hesitated, "we are having a small engagement party next month at his parents' home. It is going to be very intimate, just close family and friends." "I would love to be there," I said eagerly. Another pause. The thing is, Dad, it is going to be very formal. Black tie. And Jackson's parents are, well, they are particular about their guests. I can rent a tuxedo, I assured her, not understanding what she was trying to say. Dad, her voice hardened slightly, I think it might be better if you skip this one. There will be plenty of other opportunities to meet everyone. It was the first time she had explicitly excluded me from an important event in her life. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach, but forced myself to respect her decision. I understand, I lied. Just let me know when would be a good time. That good time never came. Over the next few months, I watched her engagement unfold through social media posts, photos of parties I was not invited to, gatherings with Jackson's family, where they welcomed her as a daughter, while I remained invisible. For Christmas that year, I spent weeks crafting a jewelry box for Amanda made from cherry wood I had salvaged from a historic building we were renovating. I carved her initials into the lid and lined it with velvet. It was the kind of gift that contained not just my skill, but my heart. When I mailed it to her, I included a note, "For all your new beginnings, love, Dad." 2 weeks later, I received a text. Got your package. Thanks, but I already have a jewelry box from Tiffany. You should have asked what I needed. No call. No acknowledgement of the work I had put into it. Just a dismissive text that made it clear my handmade gift was inadequate. That text was followed by another. By the way, Jackson thinks it is cheap and embarrassing to give handmade gifts. His family always includes gift receipts. I sat at my kitchen table reading those words over and over, feeling something break inside me. The daughter I had raised, who once treasured the birdhouse we built together when she was 10, now found my handiwork embarrassing. That night, I pulled out the old photo albums looking at pictures of Amanda growing up. Her gap-toothed smile in first grade. The proud grin when she caught her first fish. The tears in her eyes when I surprised her with concert tickets for her 16th birthday tickets. I had worked overtime for 3 months to afford. Where had that girl gone, and what had I done wrong to lose her so completely? As June approached, I waited for a wedding invitation that never came. No save-the-date card, no formal invitation, nothing. It was as if my daughter had forgotten I existed. I checked my mailbox daily, hoping, but there was never anything from her. One evening while scrolling through Facebook, I saw a mutual friend had commented congratulations on Amanda's wedding page. With a sinking feeling, I clicked on the link and found all the details of the upcoming ceremony. Saturday, June 15th, St. Patrick's Cathedral. Reception at the plaza. My daughter was getting married in 3 weeks, and I had learned about it on social media. I called Amanda immediately, my hands shaking. "Is there something you forgot to tell me?" I asked when she answered. "Dad, I am really busy right now with wedding planning." She replied, her voice distant. "I just saw online that you are getting married in 3 weeks." I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Were you planning to tell me?" A long pause. "I thought you would understand that this is going to be a certain kind of event. Jackson's family has a reputation to maintain. The guest list is very exclusive." "I am your father, Amanda," I said, my voice finally breaking. "The only family you have left." "Dad." She sighed as if I was being difficult. "You would not be comfortable there. You would not know how to act or what to say. It would be awkward for everyone." "For everyone or for you?" I asked quietly. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be," she replied coldly. "Some people are meant to be part of our past, not our future. I have a new life now." The call ended shortly after that, with no resolution, no invitation, and my heart in pieces. For days I could barely function, moving through my work like a ghost. The pain was physical, a constant ache in my chest that would not subside. But as the wedding date approached, I made a decision. I would go anyway. Not to cause a scene or to embarrass her, but because I had made a promise to Sarah that I would be there for every important moment in our daughter's life. This might be my last chance to honor that promise. I withdrew most of my savings and bought my first real suit. Not a rental, but a suit of my own. The salesman at the department store helped me pick something appropriate, something that would not look out of place at a fancy wedding. "Special occasion?" he asked as he pinned the cuffs for alterations. "My daughter's wedding," I replied, not mentioning that I had not been invited. I practiced tying a tie by watching YouTube videos, my thick fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar motions until I could manage a decent Windsor knot. I got a professional haircut and even had my shoes shined. The night before the wedding, I retrieved the small velvet box from my bedside drawer, the one containing Sarah's engagement ring. She had left it to Amanda, along with a letter to be opened on her wedding day. I had kept both safe for all these years, waiting for this moment. I also packed the pearl necklace that had belonged to Sarah's grandmother, a family heirloom meant to be Amanda's something old. Sarah had been explicit about this tradition continuing. On the morning of the wedding, I drove to New York, my heart pounding with anxiety. I parked several blocks from the cathedral and walked the rest of the way, the June sun warm on my face. St. Patrick's was imposing its Gothic spires reaching toward the sky. Guests in formal attire were already arriving, being checked off a list by attendants at the entrance. I approached slowly, uncertain of my reception, but determined to at least try. As I neared the entrance, I caught a glimpse of Amanda through the open doors. She was standing in the vestibule, radiant in her wedding gown, surrounded by bridesmaids. For a moment, she looked so much like Sarah that my breath caught in my throat. Then she turned and saw me. Her face, which had been smiling and relaxed, immediately hardened. She whispered something to one of the bridesmaids, who hurried over to a security guard. Within moments, the guard was approaching me. But before he reached me, Amanda herself strode toward the entrance, her white dress billowing around her. Several guests turned to watch. "What are you doing here?" she hissed when she reached me. "I told you not to come." "I just wanted to see you get married," I said softly. "Your mother would have wanted me here." "Do not bring Mom into this," she snapped. "She would have understood the importance of maintaining certain standards." I saw Jackson and his parents watching from a distance, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "Please, Amanda," I said, reaching for the small gift box in my pocket. "I brought something from your mother. She wanted you to have it today." "You are not invited," she said loudly, not caring who heard. "Go away." Her words echoed in the cathedral entrance. Guests stopped to stare. I stood frozen, the small velvet box clutched in my hand, as my daughter publicly rejected me on what should have been one of the happiest days of our lives. The security guard reached us, placing a firm hand on my arm. "Sir, I am going to have to ask you to leave." I looked past him to Amanda, hoping to see some flicker of regret or compassion in her eyes, but they were cold and unfamiliar. Behind her, Jackson smirked, and his father whispered something to his mother, who nodded with a satisfied expression. In that moment, standing outside the church in my new suit, holding the last connection to her mother, I faced the most painful decision of my life. I could create a scene, demand my rights as her father, and potentially ruin her wedding day. Or I could find another way. The next few moments seemed to unfold in slow motion. The security guard's hand was still on my arm, and all around us wedding guests had paused to watch the unfolding drama. Amanda stood rigid, her beautiful face twisted with embarrassment and anger. Jackson and his parents had moved closer, clearly ready to enjoy my humiliation. I felt a lifetime of emotions surge through me. Anger at being treated this way after all my sacrifices. Heartbreak that my only child could reject me so completely. Shame at being seen as unworthy by these wealthy strangers. But in that crucible of emotion, something unexpected happened. A sense of calm clarity washed over me. I gently removed the security guard's hand from my arm and stood up straight, shoulders back, chin lifted. "I understand," I said, my voice steady and clear enough for the nearby guests to hear. "I came today not to embarrass you, Amanda, but to give you something your mother wanted you to have on your wedding day." I held out the small velvet box and the sealed envelope I had protected for all these years. "This is your grandmother's pearl necklace that Sarah wore at our wedding, and the last letter she wrote to you before she died. She asked me to give these to you when you got married." Amanda's expression flickered uncertainty, crossing her features for the first time. "I worked 2 jobs for 16 years after your mother died to make sure you had everything you needed." I continued, my voice gentle but firm. "I am not telling you this to make you feel guilty, but because I want you to know that love does not come with conditions. My love for you never has." I placed the box and letter on a small table near the entrance where programs were being handed out. I have never been ashamed of who I am or what I do. I build things that last, just like I tried to build a life for you. I hope someday you will understand that worth is not measured by the price of your clothes or the people you know. I straightened my tie, the one I had practiced tying countless times for this moment. "I wish you and Jackson every happiness. Your mother would be so proud of the beautiful woman you have become." Then I smiled, turned, and began to walk away, dignity intact, refusing to let them see me broken. "Wait." The voice came from behind me, but it was not Amanda's. It was older female. I turned to see an elderly woman in an elegant blue dress, her silver hair perfectly styled, walking toward me with purpose. "Young man," she said, though I was clearly in my 50s. "I do not know you, but I know sincerity when I hear it." She turned to the gathering crowd. "I am Margaret Worthington Jackson's grandmother, and I have sat through enough society weddings to recognize true class when I see it." She linked her arm through mine, a startling gesture that left me speechless. "Any father who sacrifices as you have deserves to see his daughter married," she declared. "I insist you join us." A murmur ran through the crowd. Jackson's mother, who had been watching with a superior expression, suddenly looked uncertain. Jackson himself seemed stunned. Then from somewhere in the gathering, a slow clap began. An older gentleman, perhaps a contemporary of Margaret's, was applauding. Others joined the applause, spreading like ripples in a pond. Margaret patted my arm. "Sometimes these young people forget what matters. Come sit with me. I could use someone real to talk to during this circus." Amanda stood rooted to the spot, her face a complex mixture of emotions. The beautiful facade she had crafted was cracking, revealing glimpses of the daughter I had raised. Jackson's mother stepped forward, clearly calculating the social implications of the scene. With a tight smile, she addressed her son and my daughter. "Perhaps we should reconsider," she said smoothly. "Family is important after all." It was not a genuine change of heart, but a recognition that Margaret Worthington's approval carried more social weight than their disapproval of my background. The security guard, now looking deeply uncomfortable, stepped back. Jackson's father, reading the shifting social winds, approached with an extended hand. "A misunderstanding," he offered blandly. "Of course you are welcome." Amanda had not moved or spoken. Her bridesmaids huddled around her, whispering urgently. The wedding planner, sensing disaster, swooped in to usher everyone back to their positions. "We are starting in 5 minutes," she announced, trying to regain control of the situation. Margaret Worthington still had her arm linked with mine. "Well," she asked Amanda directly, "is your father walking you down the aisle, or shall I do it myself to spare us all further embarrassment?" I did not walk Amanda down the aisle that day. Despite Margaret Worthington's intervention and the changed atmosphere, some bridges cannot be rebuilt in an instant. Amanda's maid of honor, a college friend I had never met, performed that duty instead. I sat in the back of the cathedral, not in the front row reserved for family. Margaret had insisted I sit beside her, much to the visible discomfort of Jackson's parents. Throughout the ceremony, I felt eyes on me, some curious, some sympathetic, some still judgmental. The bride was beautiful, of course. As Amanda recited her vows, I could see traces of the little girl who once sat on my lap and made me promise to never leave her. The girl who had believed her dad could fix anything, from broken toys to broken hearts. After the ceremony, in the chaos of photographs and congratulations, I stood apart, uncertain of my place in these proceedings. I watched as Amanda was embraced by her new family, as Jackson's mother adjusted her veil with the proprietary air of someone claiming ownership. Margaret found me again, a champagne flute in her jeweled hand. "They will be doing photographs for ages," she said matter-of-factly. "These society weddings are more performance than celebration. Come tell me about your daughter when she was young before all this nonsense." For the first time that day, I smiled genuinely. We found a quiet corner, and I shared stories of Amanda's childhood, her determination to learn to ride a bike without training wheels, her science fair projects that took over our kitchen table. "She sounds like she was a wonderful child," Margaret observed. "Somewhere inside that overdressed bride is that same girl." "I hope so," I replied. During the reception, I maintained a respectful distance. I did not want to force Amanda to acknowledge me or create any more scenes. This was her day, regardless of how we had arrived at this moment. I noticed a flutter of activity near the bridal suite and saw Amanda hurrying inside, clutching something in her hand. With a start, I realized it was the envelope and box I had brought the last letter from her mother and the family heirloom. 20 minutes later, when she emerged, her eyes were red-rimmed, but her makeup perfect again. Our gazes met across the reception hall, and for a brief moment I saw recognition in her eyes, a flicker of the daughter I had known. The reception proceeded with all the extravagance one would expect from a wedding at the plaza. The champagne flowed, the music played, and elegantly dressed guests danced and mingled. I spoke with a few people, mostly older guests, who seemed less concerned with social hierarchies. Jackson's father approached me during the dinner, his manner stiff but civil. "Corbett," he said, using my name for the first time, "I understand you built your own business." "Not exactly," I replied honestly. "I work for Donovan Construction, have for 30 years. He seemed disappointed that I was not at least an entrepreneur. "Well, hard work is admirable in any form," he said, clearly reciting a platitude he did not believe. "It put my daughter through Cornell," I responded simply. "That is all that matters to me." As the evening progressed, I noticed tension between Amanda and Jackson. They spoke in hushed, urgent tones during the cake cutting, their smiles strained for the photographer. Later, I overheard fragments of their conversation. "You never told me about the letter," Jackson was saying, his voice tight with controlled anger, "or how much he sacrificed." "It does not change anything," Amanda replied defensively. "It changes how I see you," Jackson responded before walking away to join his groomsmen. I did not stay for the entire reception. After the toasts and the first dances, I quietly made my exit. I had kept my promise to Sarah. I had been present for our daughter's wedding, had conducted myself with dignity, and had delivered the items she had entrusted to me. As I walked out of the plaza into the warm June evening, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness that my relationship with Amanda had come to this. Pride that I had maintained my self-respect in a difficult situation. Hope, perhaps naive, that the letter from her mother might remind Amanda of who she really was beneath the carefully constructed facade. I returned to my modest hotel room, changed out of my new suit, and sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted by the emotional toll of the day. I had done what I came to do. The rest was up to Amanda. 2 weeks later, there was a knock at my front door. When I opened it, Amanda was standing on my porch looking smaller and younger than she had in her wedding finery. She was dressed simply, her hair pulled back, her face free of makeup. "Dad," she said, her voice breaking on that single syllable. "Can I come in?" When Amanda stepped into my living room, I saw her taking in the familiar surroundings. Nothing had changed much since she left for college. The same worn couch where we had watched movies together. The bookshelf with her high school graduation photo still in the center. The fishing trophies she had won, which I had never put away. She seemed uncertain, standing awkwardly in the middle of the room, as if she had forgotten how to be in this space that had once been her home. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked, falling back on the simple hospitality my own father had taught me. "Yes, please," she replied, and I noticed she had dropped the affected accent she had developed in college. She sounded like my Amanda again. As I prepared the coffee in the kitchen, I heard her moving around the living room, stopping occasionally as she presumably examined the unchanged photographs and mementos of her childhood. When I returned with 2 mugs, she was holding the framed photo of her mother and me on our wedding day. "I had forgotten how beautiful Mom was," she said softly. "You look just like her," I replied, setting down the mugs. "Especially in your wedding dress." Amanda's hands trembled slightly as she replaced the photo. She sat on the edge of the couch, perched like someone ready to flee at any moment. "I read Mom's letter," she finally said, "several times." I nodded but did not speak, giving her space to continue. "She wrote it 3 days before she died. Did you know what it said?" "No," I answered honestly. "She sealed it and asked me to give it to you on your wedding day. I kept that promise." Amanda's eyes filled with tears. She described her own wedding day, how nervous she was, how her father kept making jokes to make her laugh. She paused, swallowing hard. She wrote about how you worked double shifts to buy her engagement ring, how you insisted on saving for a down payment on our house instead of spending money on a fancy honeymoon. I remembered those early days of our marriage, the sacrifices that had not felt like sacrifices, because we were building something together. She told me to look for a man who values effort over ease, Amanda continued. Someone who understands that anything worth having is worth working for. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she told me never to forget where I came from, because that foundation would keep me standing through any storm. She pulled the letter from her purse, the paper already worn from multiple readings. But the part that broke me was at the end. She wrote, "Your father will move heaven and earth to be there on your wedding day, just as he has moved heaven and earth to give you a good life after I am gone. When you see him on that day, remember that true worth is not measured in dollars or status, but in unwavering love." Amanda looked up at me, her face crumpling. "And I told you to go away." The dam broke then, and she began to sob deep, racking cries that seemed to come from the bottom of her soul. I moved to sit beside her, placing my arm around her shoulders, as I had done when she was a child, frightened by thunderstorms. "I have been so horrible, Dad," she said between sobs. "So shallow and ungrateful. I do not even recognize the person I became." "You were finding your way," I said gently. "We all lose ourselves sometimes." She shook her head fiercely. "No, do not make excuses for me. What I did was unforgivable." "Nothing between a parent and child is unforgivable," I told her. "That is what unconditional love means." Amanda leaned against me, and for a while we sat in silence, the weight of years of misunderstandings and hurt between us, but also the possibility of healing. Finally, she straightened up and wiped her eyes. "Jackson and I had a huge fight after the wedding," she admitted. "He was disgusted by how I treated you. He said it showed a fundamental flaw in my character." I was surprised. Jackson had not struck me as someone who valued family loyalty. Reading my expression, Amanda explained, "His parents are the social climbers, not him. He went along with it to keep the peace, but after seeing how you handled yourself at the wedding and then reading Mom's letter," she trailed off. "He said he did not want to be married to someone who could discard people once they were no longer useful." That sounds like a man with more substance than I gave him credit for. I acknowledged. "We are trying to work through it," she said. "He wants to get to know you, the real you, not the caricature I painted." I nodded cautiously, optimistic, but wary of being hurt again. "I do not expect you to forgive me right away, or maybe ever," Amanda said. "But I want to try to be worthy of being your daughter again. If you will let me." I looked at this young woman so much like her mother in appearance, but still finding her way to the wisdom Sarah had possessed. "You have always been worthy of being my daughter," I told her. "Nothing could change that. Not Cornell, not Jackson, not a wedding I was not invited to. You are my child, and that is forever." Amanda reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. "I do not deserve you," she whispered. "It is not about deserving," I replied. "It is about belonging. And you will always belong here with me whenever you need to come home." For the first time since she had arrived, Amanda smiled a real smile that reached her eyes. "Can I stay for dinner?" she asked, sounding like the teenager who used to call from a friend's house to check if it was okay to be late. "I would like that very much," I answered. As I stood to start preparing the meal, Amanda stopped me with a gentle hand on my arm. "Dad, will you teach me how to make your famous meatloaf, the one Mom always said was better than hers?" And just like that, we began the long, delicate process of finding our way back to each other. 6 months after the wedding, on a crisp December afternoon, I received a text message from Amanda. "Dinner at our place tonight, 6:30 p.m. Jackson is making his grandmother's pot roast recipe." These invitations had become regular over the past months, a standing engagement every other week. Each one still surprised me like finding an unexpected gift. I arrived at their Brooklyn brownstone with a bottle of wine, nothing fancy, but a step up from what I would normally buy for myself. Jackson answered the door, his suit replaced by jeans and a comfortable sweater, looking more relaxed than I had ever seen him. "Corbett," he greeted me warmly, taking the wine. "Come in. Amanda is just finishing setting the table." Their home was elegant but comfortable, a blend of Jackson's inherited antiques and newer, simpler pieces that Amanda had chosen. Photos lined the hallway, including several of Amanda's childhood that she had reclaimed from my house. I was pleased to see a framed photo of Sarah and me on our wedding day displayed prominently among the family pictures. Amanda emerged from the kitchen, flower on her cheek, looking happy and at ease. "Dad," she said, embracing me without hesitation, "I made apple pie for dessert. From scratch, the way you taught me." The transformation in our relationship had not happened overnight. There had been difficult conversations, moments of backsliding, and the slow rebuilding of trust. But each small step had brought us closer to a new understanding. Over dinner, Jackson surprised me by asking detailed questions about a renovation project I was working on, a historic theater being converted into a community arts center. "That sounds fascinating," he said genuinely. "I always wanted to learn more about historic preservation. My background is all numbers and spreadsheets, nothing tangible." "You should come by the site sometime," I offered. "I could show you around." "I would like that," he replied, and I believed him. After dessert, as we sat with coffee in their living room, Amanda exchanged a meaningful glance with Jackson before turning to me. "Dad, we have some news," she said, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I am pregnant. You are going to be a grandfather." The joy that flooded through me was indescribable. I stood and embraced them both, words failing me momentarily. "If it is a girl," Amanda continued, "we want to name her Sarah after Mom." "She would have been so honored," I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. Later, as I was preparing to leave, Jackson pulled me aside. "I need to apologize to you," he said seriously. "I judged you unfairly based on superficial things. I am ashamed of that now." "We all make mistakes," I replied. "What matters is learning from them." He nodded, then asked somewhat sheepishly, "Could you show me how to install those bookshelves Amanda wants? I have never used tools much, but I would like to learn." "Nothing would make me happier," I told him, and meant it. On the drive home, I reflected on the journey of the past year, the pain of rejection, the humiliation outside the church, the dignity I had somehow found in that moment, the slow, fragile process of reconciliation. I thought about how easily I could have responded differently, with anger or bitterness, that would have permanently severed my relationship with Amanda. Instead, something had guided me to choose another path, one that left room for healing. The truth was, in those dark moments after Amanda turned me away from her wedding, I had nearly given in to rage and hurt. What had stopped me was remembering Sarah and the promise I had made to her. Not just the promise to be there for Amanda, but to be the kind of man our daughter could look up to even when it was difficult. Over the following months, I continued to see positive changes in Amanda. She volunteered at a local women's shelter. She spoke more openly about her background, no longer hiding her roots. She even brought Jackson to our small town for a weekend, showing him the lake, where she had learned to fish, the high school, where she had been valedictorian. One evening, as we sat on my porch, much as we had before she left for college, she asked the question I had been expecting. "How did you do it, Dad? How did you find the strength to respond with such dignity when I hurt you so badly?" I considered my answer carefully. "When your mother was dying, she told me something I have never forgotten. She said that our greatest power as humans is not in controlling others, but in controlling how we respond to what happens to us." I looked out at the sunset, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In that moment outside the church, I realized I had a choice. I could let your rejection define me, make me bitter and angry, or I could choose to stand in my truth and respond from a place of love, not hurt. "But I did not deserve that love," Amanda insisted. "Love is not about deserving," I told her. "It is about choosing every day to see the best in someone, even when they are not showing it to you." She was quiet for a moment. "I want to be more like you," she finally said. "I want my child to have the kind of parent I had, not the kind of daughter I was." "You will be," I assured her, "because you have learned what matters." As the baby's arrival drew closer, Amanda and Jackson asked me to help prepare the nursery. I built a cradle from cherry wood, the same wood I had used for the rejected jewelry box years earlier. This time, Amanda ran her hands over the smooth finish, with tears in her eyes, understanding the love crafted into each joint and curve. My journey taught me that dignity cannot be taken from you, only surrendered. That forgiveness is not a single act, but a daily choice. That the greatest revenge against those who have hurt you is not to become bitter, but to remain open to joy and love. As I prepare to welcome my grandchild into the world, I am grateful for all of it, the pain and the healing alike. They have shaped me, taught me, and ultimately brought me to this place of peace. If my story has touched you in any way, I would love to hear about similar experiences you might have had. Has there been a moment when choosing dignity over anger changed the course of a relationship for you? Please share in the comments below. And if you found value in this journey we have taken together, consider subscribing and sharing this story with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply stand in our truth with an open heart, ready to welcome others when they find their way back to us.